Welcome to the Road to 100 Million in Real Estate podcast, where you'll benefit from the opportunity to learn to become a skillful real estate investor. You'll get guidance from top industry producers, operators, and investors who are eager to help you learn from their proven strategies of success. Now to your host, Dorrance Constant.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Road to $100 Million in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Dorrance Constant. I've got another great guest on the show. I've got Caleb Johnson. Caleb, welcome to the show.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Great to really have you on. It's been super cool learning more about you, your story, where you've been and where you're, where you're at. But, for the folks who haven't, heard about you, I'd love for you to jump in and tell folks more about your story.
Yeah. So I've been investing for the last 6 years, and the way I got started in investing in real estate was through my parents, and not because they were wealthy by any means, but kind of the opposite, that they both had day jobs. And I think my dad's worked for the government for over 30 years, and my mom's been in the medical industry for almost 15 years. And Dorrance, I saw what they had, and I knew I did not want that for myself. So that really came into light when I was around 18 years old, and my mom had surgery, and she had about 3 months to recover and heal before she had to go back to work. So her plan was to live off of her savings. But at the end of the 3 months, she wasn't healed. And so she was kind of stuck between this rock and a hard place of, should I go back to work and, continue to make money, because she was around 60 years old and planning for retirement. That was really big in her mind. So would she gonna kind of extend her retirement years longer, or would she let her body recover and heal properly? And she actually had to make the tough decision to go back to work. Wow. And so I would honestly see her come home, man, just crying, because she was in so much pain physically and emotionally. And that just broke my heart, because I saw what that was doing to her. And I also saw that I didn't want that for myself, right? I didn't want to be 60 years old and then some unforeseen thing happen. And I've been injured where, I'm out of commission for a good amount of time. And what happens when I'm 60 years old and I'm planning for retirement, but I have to go back to work to make income? And so I didn't want to be stuck in that place. And I also wanted to help her retire early. And so that was really my driving force, my why. And I think it really starts with a why, for anyone that wants to start investing. And so that's why I start there. But I've been doing this for about 6 years now.
Man, that's awesome. I can totally relate to that. My parents are, super salt of the earth type of people, who are working hard, and had many times where it was just difficult for them, right? But they're dependent upon, this particular income that, unfortunately, many times, right, Caleb, it kind of gives you just enough not to be broke, right? If that, but having that just sole dependency on, just a W-2 can be challenging, right? So I completely relate to that story. And so you were able to look at where your mother was struggling, saying, hey, I don't want to be there. I want to have more financial freedom of some sort. So there's many ways to get that, right? So what brought you to real estate specifically?
Yeah. Around that same time, when I was 18, 19 years old, I heard the statistic that 90% of millionaires have gotten their millions through real estate. And that's profound. So I'll say that again. So 90% of millionaires have gotten their millions through real estate. And man, when I learned that, I thought, that's crazy, and those are really good odds. So if that's the tier that I want to be at, if I want to be wealthy, then I have a 90% chance of getting that if I invest in real estate. So, and it also kind of just checked all the boxes, like if in real estate, if you own the property, you kind of can dictate what happens with make-readies, injecting capital and renovating the units and increasing income. There's appreciation benefits, and at the same time, depreciation, tax benefits, because the government rewards us property owners because we provide housing. And there's just so many other benefits to real estate investing. That's why I pulled the trigger.
Gotcha. So you looked at the vision. Hey, I want to be a millionaire one day, if you're not already, and said, "Hey, that my best chances are if I go into real estate. 90% of folks are there. Yeah, there's some definitely some good company in real estate, right? So tell me about the story. How'd you get started? Where'd you begin?
So I started when I was 19, and at 19, I had about no money and no resources. So I started listening to free content, which was Bigger Pockets and YouTube. And Bigger Pockets, they threw around this term often, and which was house hacking.
Hmm.
And house hacking is when you live in one unit. Let's say you buy a fourplex or a duplex. You live in one unit and you rent out the other units, and you're able to get really favorable terms on the debt, usually 3.5% down for the down payment. So for me, that was around $10,000 to $15,000. And I had been saving for a few years of working. And so I had some capital. I had that much capital to invest, and I would live there. And that was my strategy. And so that's how I got started. I bought a fourplex in a C minus area and really got my hands dirty with that. One of my tenants was a drug dealer, another was a hoarder. And I just remember one of the first days my mom was helping me move in, and we saw this guy across the road running through an alley. And we thought, what's this guy doing? Maybe a dog's chasing him. Like, what's going on? And around the corner turns this cop who's chasing this guy. And I guess they just did a drug bust. And so it was just, kind of just went with the territory, but it was a great cash flowing property, which is usually pretty standard for those markets. And that property was in Arizona. So around 2019, 2020, there was a big appreciation wave, and we were really blessed to ride that. And that was my first property. I did a duplex, so replicated that, and then sold the fourplex after a couple of years through a 1031. And if the listeners aren't familiar with what a 1031 is, a 1031 exchange is just when you sell a property that's not your primary residence, and you can defer those taxes that you would normally pay on the gains, and you can defer those to a later date.
Hmm.
And you can actually keep doing that over and over with another 1031 once you sell the next property and the next. And so you can really defer those gains, that taxable income, indefinitely until you actually pass away. And then we bought a retail facility with that capital, and that was about 3 years into that journey.
Oh, that's awesome. So you started with the house hacking, multifamily, but man, what a story to go into. It sounds like a rough neighborhood that you were in.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't change it. That was a really great opportunity to learn, get my hands dirty, and it was a great first experience.
gotcha. So where did you transition from, the small duplexes into, larger multi-unit? What
Mhm.
was that, trigger moment for you?
Well, that was around the 3 year mark. And I always knew that I would get into commercial because I just knew that's where the real wealth was created. And that's where the big dogs played, where more money was made. So I knew I would get there, but I thought that I would get more experience in residential, like 5 years or so. And then I could translate that experience into commercial. And that would kind of help me start the right foot in my commercial journey. Around that 3 year mark, though, I went to a real estate meetup. That was my first apartment meetup. And the speaker, he shared two things that changed my life. One was that you're going to be green regardless of when you start in commercial. So you could have 20 years of experience in residential, but you can't translate all of that into commercial because they're two completely different industries, completely different mindsets. So not saying that if you have that kind of experience, you aren't better off than someone that has 1 year experience in real estate, but still it's two completely different industries. So
Hmm.
he said, start sooner rather than later. And the second piece of advice was he shared his first deal with me, actually. And that deal, he bought it, sold it after 4.5 years, and made $2.5 million on one deal. So I did the math. I thought, okay, one deal, 4.5 years, $2.5 million. There's no way I can do that in residential.
Right.
right? So I thought, it's a business. There's economy of scale factored in that as well. So he kind of sold me on the idea, and so for the past 3 years, that's what's been my focus.
Awesome. And have you started any deals already in the multifamily space?
Yeah.
And if
So
so,
we
please
have
tell us what those deals look like.
Mhm. So we have four offerings, three in New Mexico and one in Oklahoma City. Those are apartments, and then we still own the one retail facility in Arizona. And the apartments, they're from 16 to 30 units, so kind of in that smaller range, usually 1970 vintage or newer. And we like to not go so old, because the older the building that you own, usually there's more plumbing issues, electrical, HVAC issues. And so we want to be in that 1970 range. That's kind of been a sweet spot for us. And then in B and C class neighborhoods.
Awesome. So you went to, 1970s type properties. You were able to pick up some multifamily that are cash flowing, right? And were you able to determine what your sweet spot was?
Well, I had spoken with other experienced operators. And I remember one of my first deals that I was pursuing, it was in Oklahoma City, and it was in a rough neighborhood, D, C minus for sure. And I remember my first partner that I spoke with, I was bringing him the deal, and it was about 28 units. And he said, look, I've been doing this a little longer than you, Caleb, about 2 years. And the people I've spoken with, that have started at least in the D, C minus area, they've all wished that they started in the C to B neighborhood, because the cash flow wasn't worth it. The headache wasn't worth it. So starting that B to C neighborhood, and, I really took that to heart. And so that's all that we focus on today.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Awesome. And congratulations for, your success and moving forward with the advice that you're given, especially at, starting so young at 19 you mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah. Praise God.
All right, so awesome. And what advice would you give to folks who, maybe around the same age as you, or folks who just want to get started in real estate? What advice you would give them so they can, achieve success in from the beginning?
Mm-hmm. I think to start off, someone needs to identify what their goals are. I see so many people, they want to get into this game, and so they get into it, and after about 5 years, they get into it because they're unhappy. And so they get into it. And so now after about a few years, they have some success, but they still aren't happy. So I think it starts off with defining what your goal is and what's going to make you happy.
Mhm.
So that's number one. And then number two would be starting off with just free resources. There's so many different aspects of this business that you can do. So you can bring equity to the table. You can sign on the note. You can do the asset management, underwriting, offering, sourcing. And so there's a lot of hats that can be worn. And so that's why partnerships are so great, because you can partner with people that do something better than you do. And you might do something better than someone else. And so that's the value you bring. And that's really where, I recommend people start, is just with free resources, so they can kind of get a grasp for, okay, maybe I want to underwrite deals. I'm good with numbers. Maybe I want to raise capital. I have this big network coming from a tech startup. And so I think I can do that really well. So that's where I'd recommend starting.
Absolutely. That's a great thing about real estate. And I think that's sound advice, because in the multifamily space, there's so big of a pie, and there's so many moving parts. There's different ways to actually add value, right? So it's a matter of, I think, looking at some of the skill sets that you have, or the talents that you have, the resources that you may have, that you can take and actually bridge that gap for a team that may need that, whether it be underwriting, maybe it could be raising capital, something of value, and oftentimes it's important to just give it for free, right? With the potential of being able to be that fly on the wall, learn or grow your network, right? For anyone who's just looking to get started and be in the business from the ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now, Caleb, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing in your career in real estate, what would it have been?
That's a great question. And what I would say is that I would not be such an isolationist. And so what that means is I can really easy, this is just my personality, is that I can cut people out of my life very quickly. And so let's say if I think I can do something better than someone else, which is, bad, I have a pretty poor ego. And so working on that and understanding that, anyone can be valuable.
Mm-hmm.
There's always someone that knows something that I don't. And so, and being open and actually understanding that. And so, and the story that goes along with that was that after about investing in commercial for about a year, I started my own company. And I think that kind of started once I got a GP split that I wasn't happy with. And so I thought, I'm going to start my own company and do this myself with my own partners. And so I started trying to do it myself, but I learned over time, that's a flawed thinking. Like, I'm not saying that it's not always bad to start your own thing. And I still would, if I had to go back, I would still do that. But understanding it's still so important to partner with people and be willing and okay to give some of the ownership away, be able to work for maybe not for free, but just be willing to give things away sometimes. And everyone can bring value, and you definitely don't know everything. And so saying that and realizing that myself, I wish I could go back and tell myself that.
Awesome. That is sound advice. It's super important to always be able to reflect, right? And look at the ways that we could have done better, right? Hindsight is 20/20, they say, but being able to look at, hey, this is what has happened. This is what I could do to improve so that, hey, I won't end up making some of the same mistakes I've made in the past, right? Mm-hmm. So thanks for sharing that. And thanks for being super transparent. And is there anything that you're working on right now that, the audience should know about that you're really excited about?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, Dorrance. What I would say is we do have a podcast, which is called From Trial to Triumph. And I interview people who have gone through tremendous trials and they've come out triumphant. We've had people like Rod Khleif, David Lindahl, Gino Barbaro with Jake and Gino, and also, ministers, counselors, missionaries, athletes on there, influencers. So if you want to learn and hear from other people's mistakes, I think that's a great free resource. And additionally, we also offer accountability coaching that's kind of focused and critiqued towards real estate investors. So if someone's maybe not happy with not meeting their goals or their criteria on time and they feel like they can be doing better, that's what we aid those investors to do to stay on track so that they can meet their goals. And additionally, you can also visit us at redseacapitalgroup.com. We have tons of resources on there, and you can also stay up to date with what we're working on.
All right, fantastic. And are there any other ways that folks can reach out to you? Because I know you mentioned your website, emails, et cetera, that folks can reach out to you directly.
Sure, yeah. They can email me at caleb@redseacapitalgroup.com, or they can actually go to Red Sea Capital Group again, and there's a schedule a call button, and that actually has direct access to my calendar.
Perfect. All right. Well, Caleb, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. You dropped a lot of gems today, and thanks again for being transparent, vulnerable, and sharing with us your story of, frankly, trial to triumph as well.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
We trust that you enjoyed today's show. Visit archcapital.ventures to learn more about how you can leverage real estate investing to improve your life through passive income, financial freedom, and generational wealth.